Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Aubrey Reeves, President and CEO of Business and Arts. Before we begin, I'd first like to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm a settler speaking to you from Toronto. I have the honor to be a guest on the traditional lands and waters of the Petun and Wendat peoples, and the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee confederacies, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River, as well as many other Indigenous nations, some of whose names are no longer remembered. By saying the names of its original keepers, we remember that this territory continues to be subject to the dish with one spoon wampum belt covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Three Fires Confederacy of the Anishinaabe to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We acknowledge all who came before us and have traveled the land and waters of this territory. We're grateful to have the opportunity to work, to live, and to meet on these lands. Today's session will include the latest insights from the Arts Response Tracking Survey, also known as ARTS. This partnership project between Business and Arts and the National Arts Centre and Nanos Research began in May 2020. Through quarterly surveys of over 1,000 Canadian culture goers, our aim has been to provide the arts sector with insight into Canadians' shifting attitudes towards participation in indoor and outdoor arts and culture events. Recognizing the evolving needs of the arts and culture sector in a volatile and challenging environment, Arts is now in its second two-year phase. Today's session is the fourth installment of this renewed program. Thank you to the NAC for their continued collaboration. And I want to say a special thank you to Kondwani Mwase from the National Arts Centre, who will be joining us as the moderator of today's discussion. Kondwani is the NAC's Executive Director of Audience Engagement. He's a marketing professional with over a decade of experience in the fields of engagement, loyalty, and communications. A big thank you to the Speaker Series presenting partner, Power Corporation of Canada. And I'd also like to thank arts supporters Irfan Raji and David Binet for their ongoing support of this research project. The full arts report is now available in both English and French on our website. This edition of the survey was in the field in January. We're happy to have ASL interpretation for today's session, and auto-generated English and French captions can also be turned on. Only the presenters and moderators will have our microphones on today, so please submit your questions in the Q&A box and vote for the ones you think are the most relevant. The session is scheduled for 1 hour and 15 minutes to give us ample time for questions. So now we will start today's session with a presentation of the research findings by Nik Nanos. As the Chief Data Scientist at Nanos Research, Nik has led thousands of research projects in Canada and around the world, ranging from market studies, customer satisfaction tracking, creativity testing, program development, and reputation management. Nik has worked alongside with many arts and culture organizations, including the Ontario Arts Council, BC Arts, Ontario Arts Council, and a variety of museums and galleries. So welcome, Nik, and I look forward to today's session.
Hey, Aubrey, great to see you and great to join everyone. I'm going to do a screen share. Here we go. Hooray. A screen share of the report. And I'd like to say from the get-go a couple things. First of all, I will be hanging out in the chat. I won't say lurking, but hanging out in the chat to ask questions about the research findings and what they mean. So I'll be happy to take your questions there. And second thing that I'd like to say is that, this includes a combination of tracking and new stuff. We asked questions related to emotions that people felt when they attended arts and culture activities, expectations, barriers, also spending and attendance based. And we did create, a drum roll. I don't know if I should say a drum roll, but anyways, we created some personas just to have a different lens as to the data, and it provides for some really interesting insights. So starting off, how's that? Sometimes I think someone in the chat said I'm a bit of a downer sometimes on the data, but I thought this was a really good slide. We basically asked a question about what emotions come to mind when attending arts or culture events. And you can see this is a word cloud. As many of you know, word cloud, the bigger the word, the more prevalent that word is. And you can see joy and comfort actually being the top two things that people identified as the emotions they felt, including things like happiness, relaxation, all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to put that on the table because it's interesting, especially when we look at the different profiles and personas that we have, how they kind of articulated the emotions that they felt. But I wanted to put this on the table in terms of the big picture and the important contribution and role that arts and culture events and gatherings and platforms have for people's personal well-being, their mental health, all that kind of stuff. So, and what's interesting is that when we ask what people are looking for in the experience attending arts and culture events, a number of things really jump out. First of all, learning new things, and about just as many people talk about a change of scene or escape from every day, socializing with friends and family, relaxing, de-stressing, relieving anxiety. The other thing I thought was quite interesting, and I'd just like to say professionally, not personally, is you can see younger culture goers more likely to look for arts and culture activities for a date night, 23%, compared to those over 55 years of age at 10%. So you can see a little extra added dimension, at least for younger people, that, in addition to wanting to learn things, joy, all that kind of stuff, and socializing, that it has that dimension as part of the experience for them. Now, those are the experiences and what people are looking to get out of the arts and culture activities. Let's just for a second talk about barriers. What you can see here is that the number one barrier, and we have to remember this was a national survey of individuals from across the country, location actually for 1/3 of individuals was identified as the top barrier to attendance at an arts and culture event. The good news is about 1 out of every 5 said that there were no barriers. The other thing that I'd like to put down are things that came up had to do with uncertainty, either not knowing if I will enjoy it at 12% and another 12% standing in line. So what you can see is a bit of a mix. One related to geography, which is hard to get around, but another dimension, at least when it comes to potential barriers, has to do with uncertainty, whether people will like it or not, or standing in line. And when we think about how folks report and find the sources to learn about things, you can see, not a big surprise, searching online is at the top. The other thing is nipping on the heels of searching online is friends and family, which speaks to one of the things we've talked about, the panels have talked about, and I've talked about in the past, word of mouth, the importance of word of mouth, where someone has a great experience at an arts and culture gathering, and they want to share that experience with friends and family, and that being one of the key drivers of getting more people to come out. The other thing that is really quite striking is that you can see social media is really the best way that to kind of reach out to those under 35 years of age. 7 out of every 10 of individuals say they learn about arts and cultural events and attending that they're going to attend through social media if they happen to be younger. And for older people, I guess like me, they're more likely to look at email and newsletters. When it comes to spending on arts and cultural events, the plus minus scores and the mean and the median, the plus minus scores are the difference between those that say that they intend to spend more compared to those that are going to spend less. And perhaps the key takeaway here is that when we look at individuals that are under 55 years of age, they say they're going to spend a little more, but you can see that if you happen to be over 55 years of age, you're much more likely that you'll be spending more on arts and culture events in the coming year. The other thing is the difference between the mean and the median for those mathematical geeks and individuals. Mean is the average, median is the midpoint, which means that 50% of the sample reported, or at least 50% reported a particular value. You'll see a big difference between the mean or the average and the median. It's because there are some folks in the sample that actually reported a very high dollar value in terms of their budget for arts and cultural events. And when they do that, it creates for a higher average score. More conservatively, for small c conservatively, I tend to look at the median, which means that at least half of the patrons and supporters of arts and culture report that they're going to spend at least $500. And you can see that that's the consistent number right across the board. So personas. So we basically created 3 personas out of our national survey of the general populace. Those that we're calling vociferous culture goers, those limited exposure, and non-culture goers. And you can see 8 out of every 10 Canadians are culture goers to one extent or another. I don't know who those other 19% of people are. They're definitely not my friends, but it's not the circle that I kind of run in. The key takeaway here is that there are some noticeable differences between those that are more actively and more frequently engaged in arts and culture activities compared to those that are engaged, but to a lesser level of intensity. First of all, intensity more highly correlates with gender in terms of people that self-identify as women. And you can see they also tend to be more educated and actually have a higher income and are more likely to read the newspaper. For those that are not as active or not as frequent in terms of their engagement with arts and culture, but still are in the community, they're more likely to get their information on arts and culture through television. And, you can see they're a little less educated and have a bit of a lower income. The other thing is that, you can see regardless of how intense they are in terms of their attendance at arts and culture events, location's still the number one barrier. But you can see that for those that attend a lot, they tend to report that they're interested in learning new things compared to those that are less frequent, who are looking to escape and socialize with friends. The good news is that everybody's into joy and happiness, especially if you're into arts and especially if you're a vociferous culture goer. You're more likely to connect that with how you feel and what you want out of events. And the other thing is that you can see that for those that don't spend as much, they're spending more of their leisure budget on traveling and dining out compared to other types of culture goers. When it comes to attendance, what we can see is that, the way I look at it is that it's been fairly steady for the last while in terms of participation, the trend line between those that report going to indoor events, outdoor events, and museums in galleries. And I think our objective here would be to try to increase the intensity from once every 6 months or less to every couple months, or at least every month. So steady state on that front and still room for improvement. So with that, I think that is it for me. I will be going over to the chat place to answer any questions. And Kondwani, I'm passing it over to you.
Thanks so much, Nick. Appreciate it. Don't go too far, by the way. Don't go too far. I know you said you'd be lurking, but you should be lurking and available. Just a heads up. 100%. Want to thank again Nik Nanos for that summary of the research. By the way, as Aubrey mentioned at the top and Nick has mentioned, if anybody has any technical questions about the data or the methodology, Nick will be happy to answer those questions in a Q&A box during the course of our discussion. Turning now to our discussion, which I'm super excited about after that rousing and exciting, actually, report. So thank you again for that, Nick. Want to introduce 2 of our guests today. They are Rachael DiMenna and Jasmine Bradley. So I'll start with Rachael. Rachael leads Canadian strategy and partnerships at Fever, which is an entertainment technology company on a mission to democratize access to live entertainment and culture. I really like that, and we'll probably get into that a little bit later. They are most known for their Candlelight Concerts and other immersive experiences, such as the Van Gogh Immersive Experience. Prior to joining Fever, Rachael was a strategy consultant and worked with some of the largest media and entertainment and consumer product companies in Canada. Turning now to Jasmine. Jasmine Bradley is an accomplished communications professional with more than 15 years experience and a demonstrated history of working in the public sector. In her role as Senior Director of Communications and Branding for the Vancouver Art Gallery, Jasmine is responsible for the development and implementation of strategic communications that move forward the gallery's mission, vision, and values. She also leads communication on the current Build Up campaign, helping to share and shape the future of the new gallery. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for being with us. Really excited to get into this discussion. I wanted to sort of dive in with that that carrot and that teaser that Nik started us off with at the beginning, which was those three personas. I'm a firm believer that in order to address any problem, and in order to address anything in life for that matter, you've got to frame the conversation and got to put some language around it. So the language that Nik and his team put around it was vociferous culture goers, limited exposure, and non-culture goers. I want to invite the audience to go ahead and put in the chat your suggestions. I'm crowdsourcing for you, Nik, here. Your suggestions on whether or not you like those personas and whether or not you have ideas for different names for them. Rachael, Jasmine, I want to turn to you now and ask you very pointedly about those different personas. In the work that you do, and maybe we'll start with you, Rachael, how do you approach these different groups? How do you speak to them, engage them, and excite them?
Sure. I personally like the groups. I like vociferous. I would consider myself a vociferous culture goer. Yeah, I mean, the thing I'm always cognizant of is the messaging that resonates for me isn't going to resonate for everyone. And having those different groups and understanding what the key decision factors are for them is really, really interesting to me. So, you know, for vociferous culture goers, they're probably going to go there anyway, but limited exposure or non-culture goers need a little bit more convincing. So, I mean, one of the things we try to do at Fever, because we do actually operate across a number of multi-category experiences. I mean, you mentioned Candlelight Concerts. So we have music and classical music, jazz music there, but we also do sports. We also do immersive experiences. And so the first thing I'll say is the key feature of what we're trying to build in our marketplace is matching the experiences to the person, to the user that's coming to discover and to browse different experiences. So understanding who they are and therefore what they're most likely to be interested in is part one. But then when I think about marketing messaging or marketing tactics, the most important thing is we let the data tell us the answer, right? We let the data tell us who is going to be the ideal audience for this experience and what's going to work for them, and make sure we're building in flexibility to optimize our tactics along the way. So, I mean, one example that stuck out to me when I read that the limited exposure or younger culture goers are connect with excitement or connect with a feeling of scarcity. One tactic we use is something called a waitlist strategy, where when we know there's going to be an experience that's a little bit newer, more innovative, needs a little bit more convincing for people to want to go, we'll release a waitlist in the market that it's opening in a few months before and see what signups we get for the waitlist. So maybe we get tons of signups from people in the 20 to 30 age range, and we know those are the people we want to target. Maybe we get a ton of signups in Montreal, but not so many in Toronto. And that experience is then better suited for Montreal as its first launch. So there's a whole number of kind of tactics we use to, I'm rambling a bit here, but to really uncover that data, match it with these different types of culture goers, and then go from there.
That's remarkable. I really like that. I was going to say something a little cheesy, like you try to build a fever pitch, but that would have been too easy to walk into, given where you work. But thank you for that. Flexibility was one word that I heard a lot in your response there. Jasmine, if I turn to you and for the Vancouver Arts Gallery, what's your approach? Is flexibility something that you lean into, or do you have a different way of going about it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And hello, everybody. Seeing the number by the participant list there is very high and very intimidating, but I'm really happy to be here and joining from Vancouver on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I too really like these personas, and the non-culture category. I throw out the question of maybe it can be positioned in a more positive way as like an area of opportunity for us in terms of audience, and how the non-culture goers maybe even define what those events that they go to are, and there might be some crossover that they didn't realize there. But in terms of that flexibility for us at the Vancouver Art Gallery, it really comes down to experience and providing that flexibility in experiences. And, from a marketing communication strategy perspective, what does that mean? What does that look like? It means we have to really expand our strategy into some unknown areas. So under the vociferous culture goers, I was really interested in that stat around radio. And so as a visual institution, radio isn't, aside from interviews, it's not really a platform that we've ventured into very much, but we have been, and the response to it has been fantastic. And just the creative possibilities around having a host from a radio program come into the gallery and describe what they're seeing, what they're feeling and experiencing has really resonated with audiences here. And it's opened a whole new door of possibilities for us. Partnerships, especially in that limited exposure category, has been something we've really leaned into. I know there's a number of our partner associations on the line here with us, but other art and culture institutions collaborating and seeing what combined experiences we can offer our members, subscribers, and just working internally as well to offer different kinds of experiences. So you come to see the visual art, but there might be a performance happening. There might be some poetry that's occurring in another corner. There's food, there's feasting, as we like to say here. So there's a lot of different experiences, and within that, flexibility.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that. That's I was thinking about when you were describing the radio that, like radio is dead, and it's far from, right? Like how long have we been talking about the death knell of radio, but you're using that as a medium and as a way to communicate to people. So really remarkable and really innovative, actually. So appreciate both of your answers on that. I wanted to, and I'm going to try and do this in a way that's a little bit fluid, but in a way, I do want to bring Nik back on, and pardon me for pulling you away from the depths, but I wanted to ask all three of you this next question about what struck you most in this report. One of the things that I find really interesting, and I have two things listed for myself, but one of the things I really find interesting for people who are listening and taking this information in is if after you leave here today, there's one thing that you want to remember about this report, what it inspired in you. What is it? What do you take away from that? And maybe if I can start with you, Nik. I know I just pulled you back on camera, but if you don't mind, I would love to hear your perspective on what was your, if I could say one thing that you take away from this.
Joy. How's that? You know what? We tend to be all focused. No, we tend to be all focused on a lot of the mechanics and the operations and all the planning and the tactics and all that kind of stuff, when we have to remember really what the core mission and role of arts and culture is basically to uplift and engage people, to make our societies better, to make people better and stuff like that. And I thought it was very validating for me as a supporter of the sector to see that, because it's kind of like, yeah, we still got it kind of deal. And then, because, we tend to focus on, how can we get people more engaged? How did we transition in the post-pandemic world? So I would say that as kind of a reminder of the core mission and the big impact, the really important positive impact that the sector has.
Amazing. I wish you were, you weren't waffling on your response there. But thank you for that, Nik. That ranked very high, if not at the top of my list as well, for sure, in terms of takeaways. Rachael, in reverse order, what are your thoughts in this? If there's one thing you take away, what would it be? and why?
I loved seeing the good news, and I know Nick even framed it as sometimes I'm bringing bad news, and today I'm bringing good news. And that's what we've been seeing as well in the data. I think there's consistent recovery, consistent trends towards people wanting to get engaged, especially in live experiences, wanting to get out of their house, wanting to connect with people. And so that creates a lot of, I think, optimism for me, and a lot of opportunity, to Jasmine's point, around those 60% of people that wouldn't describe themselves as frequent culture goers. There is opportunity to really capture some of their behaviors and some of the ways we can reach them, and hopefully turn them into vociferous culture goers.
Thank you for that, for sure. Okay, so we got 2 for Joy, but Jasmine, don't feel any peer pressure on this one. What was your number one takeaway? I noticed that you'd mentioned a few different stats about the limited exposure one, I think it was, but was there anything that struck you?
When I looked at the word cloud, it really brought home the importance of art in terms of healing. And this is something that is very topical at the Vancouver Art Gallery, in particular with our public engagement and learning team led by Sirish Rao, my colleague. It's something that we think a lot about here. And with COVID, it really highlighted the importance of connection and culture for society's well-being, and the role that art can play as an integral part of that individual and collective healing process. And so when I look at some of these words, that really drives home the point that as an art gallery, people turn to art for solace, for escape, for inspiration, and processing harder emotions like grief. And that's what's really exciting to me. That's what's exciting here at the gallery. We're exploring that idea of art and healing and the connection there in a very exciting way. So yeah.
I love that response. And healing is what we do. And I know there's a few of our artistic directors here at the National Arts Center do talk a lot about that. Not only that, the arts is a bit of a human right in a very emotional way, but that it does provide a way to heal, to smile, to feel joy. So love that we're in that space, and it's an amazing space to be in. If we double click on the emotions, and I kind of want to stay on this thread and run a little bit deep, and then we can switch after that. But this idea of these different emotions that people are feeling when they come into shows, we had emotions that are associated with attending arts and culture events, being joy, excitement, and comfort, but we did see a bit of a turn in that older patrons, more mature patrons, I don't like old, more mature patrons, reported more skewing towards the comfort, whereas the younger ones skewed more towards excitement and joy. Nick, I'm looking at you to correct me if I'm off there, but hopefully I'm okay. How do you, in particular, maybe I'll come back to you, Jasmine. How do you use this type of information and insight to craft messaging to your audiences?
I start from the place of really looking at, well, the data, but the experiences that people are either looking for or that we're able to provide in very specific ways. So just some examples of how we're doing that, we have a new program for seniors. It's a dance program. They come into one of our exhibitions and they perform choreographed dances. That's part of the healing and the piece around loneliness in seniors, and just it's a very beautiful program that the gallery has been offering. And so that's a specific need, that's a specific program that's being offered. And so then I need to take that with my team and look at how do we market that in a way that tells the story behind the experience that's being offered. On the others flip side of the spectrum, Vancouver has a reputation of a no fun city. Let's just say it, it's true. But we started these public facing events called art parties, and it's, the we do them twice a year. It's the only time the gallery really just opens up our doors to the public. All floors are activated. There's different experiences everywhere that's happening. And Vancouverites came out. They were dressed to the nines and they were celebrating, and there was this renewed energy around it. And so again, it's kind of just telling the story behind that from a marketing and communication perspective, and looking at not only how do we tell the story, but where are we telling the story? How are we reaching our audiences as well?
That's amazing. I love that. For if I can just ask you a follow-up on that one, for those events, when you said Vancouverites turned out, I love that. In the research as well, there was a nod to I think it was 56% or 54%, I'm not sure, of people were getting their information from word of mouth. Do you find that those events that you're having where people are turning up are like, is that manifesting for you? Is that a reality for you, I guess is the question.
I think it is, in combination with a number of other factors. And I know the stats and the data point to this as well, the importance of social media. I think that becomes more complex when we look here in Canada at things like Bill C-18 and just the limitations that has, made a reality for news outlets and for institutions. And so getting creative about how do we kind of work within that? The newsletter piece as well. I know, again, pointing to the data there, we're seeing open rates and click rates like we've never seen before. And I think it just goes to show that people are looking for information in different and new places. But that word of mouth, the making sure that members know, hey, you can bring somebody along and maybe they become a member too, is critical.
Thank you for that. No doubt, no doubt. Rachael, thank you for patiently waiting. I wanted to ask that question because I thought the Vancouverites turning out, I could just picture that, and so I gotta time my next visit appropriately. But in the work that you do, Rachael, maybe going back to the original question which I had asked, which is this I don't want to say a divide, but maybe a slight nuance in how older audiences are leaning more towards comfort, and then younger audiences are leaning more towards excitement and joy. Is that something that you've seen in the work that you do? And if so, how are you, leveraging that information, to drive people towards your events?
Yeah. I think it certainly is something we've seen. Different demographics or folks who consume different types of entertainment act differently and feel differently. And like Jasmine said, you look at the data and let it tell you what the best way to approach them is. I think an interesting piece that Jasmine picked up on is using that insight and using that tailored messaging in marketing and communications, but also in the production and programming and how you're engaging with, like, what are you doing to engage with people? So let me take 10 seconds of context for folks that aren't super familiar with Fever. The easiest analogy is like we're the Netflix of live entertainment. So on our marketplace, we've got experiences produced by others, and we also have experiences produced by us, so original programming. And because we have that insight into the data across production, marketing, selling, we're using that to tailor the messaging in each stage. So the Candlelight Concerts experience, which you mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, a really interesting story because that experience was 100% built based on data and based on what the data was telling us about specific audience types, right? So with that experience in particular, younger folks we knew were interested in classical music, but were not resonating with the messaging or the communication or the programming that was available with classical music. They weren't finding the right ways to engage, right? And the other thing we were seeing was that same demographic of people really liked light imagery. Like they were always clicking on candles or pictures of light or whatever it might be. So in the production and programming and ideation step of that experience, we took that data and created a program that was, a shorter program, more accessible ticket prices, an intimate venue, no need to dress up, come in your jeans, come in your tracksuit, whatever you need, and surrounded the artists with candles because that really resonated with young folks. And it's been a hugely, hugely successful experience. And Fever is actually now the largest seller of classical experiences worldwide. And our audience members for that experience are in the 25 to 40 age range, which is so cool for a classical music experience. So to your point about different emotions or different messaging resonating with different audience members, it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to use that insight, across the full gambit of what everyone on this call is working on, which is programming, the marketing, and the engagement along the way.
Well, that's so remarkable. I love the story, and so you've kind of stole my next question. It was going to be a nice segue. You just went into it. No, it's all good, all good. But if we can maybe rest for a second on the Fever approach and those Candlelight concerts, which are oh gosh, I wrote this down. Catching fire again. I'm very cheesy. Fever.
I love the puns.
Yeah, the puns. It's fodder for it. But anyways, it seems to me what I just interpreted there was there was a slight marriage there, or slight. There's a marriage there between sort of data insights and then programming kind of coming together harmoniously to build this specific the Candlelight concerts. How has that journey been both internally and then when you first rolled it out? How was the reception in the marketplace? Even though you're being informed by data, how was that journey, and how maybe trepidatious was it, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, the rollout was quite successful over the course of COVID as well. So this idea was founded in 2019, actually started in Spain. And then within 18 months, we brought it to over 80 cities. So it was a hugely successful rollout, I think, because it was informed by data. But to your point around some of the kind of challenges or key learnings along the way, a few success factors I think that were important in that rollout is this isn't a touring production. We actually operate it simultaneously in, I think, now over 120 different cities. We're growing quite fast. And the key there was working with local venues or local, meeting points for arts and culture, and employing local artists and event organizers. So I think that piece to me is really critical in how it was first received by audiences, and then how it's been successful rolling out. Is there's always something magical about coming from the grassroots of a community or really working in partnership with a community rather than bringing an experience and then trying to force people to be invested in it. So I think that for me is a key success factor I would call out in terms of making sure it's received well in the markets that it launches in.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. Sort of the background and the backstory, but to that, I know it's quite literally been something that's popping up, seemingly out of nowhere, but it's all over the place, and so it's really great to hear that it's such a success and in so many different countries. From something that has really sort of a wide reach to something that has much more of a local and intimate reach. Jasmine, if I can turn to you for a second to talk about the work that you're doing for the Vancouver Art Gallery and the Build Up campaign, if you will, which is a project, if you could describe it, but insofar as I know, the art gallery is moving or building a site in the heart of the city. So can you talk to us about that and in the work that you do, how it's been to build that vision out, to communicate that vision out to the city and to the constituents that you're trying to serve?
Yes, absolutely. Happy to share. The Vancouver Art Gallery really truly is at this moment of transformation. And the questions that we're asking ourselves is, what does a gallery look like in the 21st century? What does the Vancouver Art Gallery look like in the 21st century? And so we are actually next week, construction begins at the site for the new Vancouver Art Gallery building. And it's an exciting moment because it really does allow us the opportunity to envision a new way of being as a gallery. And, this is a project that has been talked about for more than a decade. And it's been dreamed about for more than a decade, and it's now finally coming into reality. And so, you know, a big challenge from the perspective of designing the build up campaign is to really kind of focus on building awareness, because it's been talked about for so long. There was a high degree of skepticism that this project would ever happen. And so really kind of, you know, trying to increase that awareness locally and internationally to a degree as well about the project, how we're approaching it, the 4 pathways that are guiding us along this journey. At the heart of the vision for the new building, we have art and artists. We have celebrating Indigenous cultures, community and learning, environmental sustainability. Sometimes art galleries can feel like a space of the elite, a place of distance reverence, so to speak, if that makes sense. And especially for an institution like the Vancouver Art Gallery that has a colonial legacy, we are really trying to move from a temple to a forum, a place of hospitality and welcoming, of gathering, and a place for dialogue in a safe and respectful way. And so public awareness was a big part of it. We did launch the campaign to coincide with our ground awakening ceremony as well. And, you know, to really kind of take all forms of marketing, print, digital, you know, strong
Radio.
radio, exactly. Can't forget radio, billboards, posters. I mean, city poll. It was a massive effort. But at the core of the strategy was storytelling, and really kind of highlighting what we're trying to build, and to have people feel connected and engaged in that, and part of the journey, to join us on that journey, to help us shape what a museum and art gallery looks like here in Vancouver in the 21st century.
I love that response, and it's making me think about the name of the campaign, or is it the name of the project? Build up is that it seems to have so many different ways into it. What's the significance for that for you?
Thank you for acknowledging that, Kondwani, because that's exactly the purpose of it. It has many meanings. It's like literally building up the new art gallery from a construction perspective, but it's also, you know, that emotional buildup that we're having as well. And so, you know, that is the title of our current campaign. We have a fundraising goal we're working towards, and we're making good progress there. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun to just see the collateral around the city, and to have people start to recognize, oh yeah, that has to do with the new gallery that's being built. So it's been great.
Yeah, no, well, your work is not going unnoticed in all of those different ways. And so thank you for that, on behalf of us, but also your community, I'm sure. Just a quick reminder and a time check for folks. We are almost going to be opening it up to questions from the audience. So please, if you have something, a burning question for our 2 amazing guests here, whether it be anything related to Fever, or obviously the art gallery that we were just talking about in Vancouver, or Nik, please put those in the chat. I wanted to ask you both, you know, the work that we do, we're in the business of the arts, right, at the end of the day. So all of these initiatives, all of these emotions that we are trying to get out at and reach and touch the humans that we share space with, is really remarkable. But we have to balance that with business and driving revenue. So I'm wondering, some of the stats in the report did mention, that, you know, there's good news, right, in terms of people's spending habits, and perhaps that's a sign that inflation is starting to ease for a bit of consumers. But you know, let's maybe to ask the question is, how are you? How have you been seeing and experiencing spending when it comes to people who are coming into your spaces? Maybe because you were just speaking, I'll go to Rachael to start this one, and then come back to you, Jasmine. So the question there is, how are you experiencing people's spending habits, and how has that informed your work?
I mean, in line with some of the results we saw from the survey, I think certainly a a continued upward trend in spending, which is great. I think we also talked about click-through rates in one of the earlier questions. We're seeing increased click-through rates, especially I have the privilege of looking at the data across North America, and click-through rates in Canada are much higher than US cities, which I love to see, because to me that says Canadian consumers are interested in learning more, and the demand is there and the interest is there. Beyond that, I would say dynamic pricing is something that we look very, very closely at for both our original events and for the events that end up on our marketplace and we're partnering with. Accessibility and transparency are extremely critical to making sure consumers have a great experience. At the same time, as you said, with pressure on business models, we want to be doing that correct iteration to make sure we're getting the most number of people out and seeing the right revenue come through to the producer. So it can be tricky, but again, building in some of that flexibility to let the data tell you what is the right price for this market, what is going to be a deterrent for people, what different types of pricing points or like ticket types can we provide to make sure we're hitting that accessibility point as well. Those are all really critical factors for us that we spend a lot of time on a daily basis talking about and iterating and optimizing.
Yeah, that's thank you for that response. I'm thinking back to an earlier response when you mentioned the word flexibility. So I suppose flexibility is also part of your pricing outlook and approach.
Exactly. So both kind of setting from the outset, if we've got a Candlelight concert running 7 days of the week, for example, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are probably going to be priced a little bit differently than a Friday, Saturday. But also if we've got an experience running for let's call it 6 months, what is that open gate price? What is the best price at launch? And then do we need to bring that down or bring it up a little bit along the way to make sure we're hitting that optimal point? We want to be open to iterating against all of those factors, so long as, of course, we're putting the customer first and making sure there's transparency along that process.
Appreciate you on that. Jasmine, same question for you in terms of Vancouver Art Gallery. What's been your approach or what's been your experience in terms of spending habits for folks?
Yeah, my colleagues in audience development just actually provided me with some updated stats. So we're seeing the same trend. Our single ticket admission last year increased by about 11%. And, we are seeing similar kind of increases in our membership numbers as well. Are we at pre-pandemic levels? No, not with admissions, not with memberships, but the trend is positive, and it almost feels like this past year, people have really started to come out more since COVID. Tourism seems to be back in a bigger way, which for us in Vancouver is a huge thing, all the cruise ships that come in. And so we do expect to see these numbers continue to climb, which is really good news. Unlike Rachael, we don't have as much flexibility around our pricing and everything else, but what we have focused on is accessibility. And so with a new partnership with BMO, we have free First Friday nights, which means the first Friday of every month, from 4 to 8, the gallery is open to the public. We consistently hit maximum capacity. We have more than 4,000 people coming through during that period for each Friday of the month. What that tells me is there is an interest there. And so that's really positive. We also introduced a new $5 a monthly subscription for an annual access pass as well. And so we're just trying to look at different ways that we can kind of approach that. And all signs are positive, though, that we're not out of the woods yet.
Yeah, certainly not. But I'm really excited to hear you've taken sort of an innovative approach to some of the work, and it's paying off right now. Some of those experiments, if you want to call them that. I don't think the experiment is the right word, but I'm at a loss for a second here. We're almost at time to open it up to folks from the audience to share their questions, but I'm going to take one. Oh, they're all equally voted up, so I'm going to just take the one. I'll make a moderator's choice here, and I'll throw it out to both of you. We've talked about younger audiences. We've talked about more mature audiences, not old. But one of the questions here is, have you employed any strategies to engage with families with kids? So is there anything particular in either one of your strategies that really is targeted for those? And can you share a little bit about that? I see you both nodding, so I'm not too sure who I should go to first. So that's a yes. Maybe, yeah. Yes, Jasmine, if you could kick us off.
Won the coin cost there, Rachel.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we have a fantastic family programming team here at the gallery. I think one of the, challenges that we have is for families, especially with young children. And we were just talking about this with my team, and if you have smaller children as well. And it's like, oh, that feels like you can't bring your kids into an art gallery. They're going to touch things. And it's just like, they're going to be loud in a quiet space. And we're trying to break down those barriers. And so every Sunday we have an event series called The Making Place, where families can come in, people of all ages really, and they can make art. Supplies are provided based on the exhibitions, based on the inspiration they feel from the exhibitions that they're seeing. We just had Family Day, and we did a book reading for children, and had tours for all ages. And we're really trying to focus on this area. I think for the gallery, there was a period since COVID where that has been lacking. And so we've really kind of tried to put some renewed energy into this, and it's been really well received. So
amazing. Rachael, do you have any that you can share as well? Thank you for that, by the way, Jasmine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk a bit again about programming, because I think that is such a core part of being able to attract families and attract kids. And I'll call out a couple of our partners specifically. So these aren't Fever produced events, but they're events with producers we work with that I think are really cool, that are focused in the edutainment space, education, entertainment space. So some of you may have been to or seen ads for the Jurassic World exhibition that's in Mississauga. That one has been hugely, hugely successful. I think well over 250,000 visitors since it's been in Mississauga. And it's one of the pieces of feedback I heard from someone who visited was, I brought my 4-year-old, or however old they were. I brought my 4-year-old. She was both terrified and highly enjoyed it. And for an experience with animatronic dinosaurs, I think that's a great compliment if the 4-year-old was a little bit scared. So I think these edutainment type experiences are really important, and we're seeing a lot more producers look into that space across all markets, Canada and otherwise. The other, I guess, trend that I've seen is around IP-based entertainment. So similar to the Jurassic World piece, you see Stranger Things experience, there's experience around like Peppa Pig. So I think IP and partnering with IP owners can be an interesting way also to engage families, because there's that level of recognition. It can be a little bit of a harder sell to convince a kid to go to, I don't know, Candlelight Concert by classical artist versus Candlelight Concert that's the music of, I don't know, we don't have a kids-based one right now, but the music of the cartoons of your childhood or whatever it might be. So I think that's another trend we've been seeing a lot of. And the last, of course, is bringing it back to the data around your marketing strategy. When we look at promotions for like Family Day weekends, when you look at promotions for holidays when kids aren't in school, those have been very, very successful, both in terms of click-throughs on advertising as well as translating to spikes in ticket sales. So, having that intimate understanding of whatever market you're operating in, and when people are looking for family entertainment, can be very helpful.
Well, I love the edutainment, and I'm actually kind of interested to know how any experience with Peppa Pig at the heart of it can be fun. So I got to go check that out. Stranger Things is too scary for me, and probably dinosaurs is the same. So, but that's programming at the heart of it is what I heard from you. So really appreciate from both of you on that particular angle. There's a couple of different spaces I want to run to, but I'll try and respect the forum here, which was to go to some of the questions from the audience. One of these really good, great question that was posed by one of our audience members had to do with touched on SEO or SEM rather tactics, and that was something that we noticed in the research there. So that's why I want to point at this question. And so it is. I'll read it off here. I'm curious if you can share what data source you were using to identify that your target audience engages with light. So that one is specific to you, Rachael. And then maybe as a follow-up, Jasmine, I'd love to hear from you this as well. Is like how much do you collectively rely on SEO, SEM, and analytics in understanding people's behavior in order to inform your programming initiatives? So maybe we'll start with you, Rachael, on the light angle, and then maybe if you could expand on that.
Yeah, so to hit on that one explicitly, it would have been our internal databases. So we have our marketplace where we have listed, a whole set of experience across all the different entertainment categories. I don't think I've mentioned on this panel, we actually also own a Secret Media Network, which is our editorial arm. So it's a cultural guide where we publish organic content about things to do in the city. So we've got a local cultural guide in every city we operate in, and most of the content will be purely organic, the same content you would see on like a NAR City or a Blog.to or those kinds of things, and some of it will be specific to our original experiences. And that one is a really, really interesting data source because you're seeing how people organically interact with content about things to do in their city. So that's where we would have gotten a lot of the insight on whenever there was a light-based experience or a candlelight-based experience, people were very interested in what that was about. So internal data is...
If I can stop you for a second. So if I'm understanding correctly, so Secret Media is a sort of a sister company or a sister department within Fever, but the content that's created is not explicitly Fever content. It is writ large about the entertainment space, arts and culture and entertainment space.
That's right. So our editors and our staff writers on that team operate at an arm's length. They are not beholden to, promote Fever is the best thing, number one thing to do in the city. But of course, the insights from the types of articles they write and the types of engagement they get are hugely helpful across the business.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. Jasmine, from the work that you do, what is the search engine strategy for you, whether it be optimization or search engine marketing? Have you dipped your toe in there?
Yeah, so this is an area that we really do need to. And so if anybody has advice, please let me know, reach out. We have a lot of work to do in this area. We do use a third party to help with our SEO, but mobile responsiveness for a site, accessibility, these are all areas that are a priority for my team to start exploring. So developing an SEO strategy and having something to work from.
Amazing.
I can rattle off a couple best practices and tips as you continue to think about it. To the point around that organic content versus the promoted content, kind of the strategy and the split around SEO, which is, how early it shows up in the search engine, versus SEM, which is paid to show up, for those on the call that aren't as familiar. And the budget you're going to put towards SEM versus what you're going to try to achieve through SEO is really critical to us. So for example, we're much more likely to use SEM for the Fever brand or one of our partners' experiences and their brand, like the Jurassic World brand, for example. And we're more likely to use SEO for our organic content. So if you look up, top 5 immersive things to do in Toronto, think the second or third thing that comes up is an article from Secret Media, Secret Toronto. So, and that's organic. So that split is really interesting and can be really interesting part of the strategy. And then in terms of best practices, I know everyone is probably familiar with like naming your events to optimize SEO and using meta tags to have that discoverability higher. But a piece that I wasn't aware of until I dug deeper into it is the web page itself and how that web page appears, and the performance of that web page is really critical to how high it shows up on SEO. So reducing that bounce rate and, you know, all those boring technical
fun.
things.
No, geek out. This is these are the types of things we need to geek out on as an industry, right? Because this is the currency, right? So sorry, continue to geek out on it. I love it.
No, that's pretty much the end of my geeking out. But
yeah.
But yeah, the web page itself, and you know, having that good hero video, making sure the bounce rate is really low, making sure web pages are loading in less than 3 seconds. I think the stat was at 3 seconds, you're going to see 70% of people leave the site because it's taking too long to load. So, you know, small tactical things like that do end up having a big impact on SEO.
100%. Thank you both for sharing on that. And even if it's to be honest about where you are in that journey, Jasmine, because that is a truth, but I think it's something that we all need to explore. We have about 5 to 7 minutes left before I have to close it. But this is a great discussion and some really good questions that are coming in from the audience as well. They continue to flow in. So this one maybe is pointed right at you, Jasmine, in terms of speaking of geeking out on the radio. There's one of our great audience members is curious to know about the radio station that you did work with that came on site, and then, you know, maybe if I can tack on to that is how is that journey for you, and are you planning to use that as another as an ongoing strategy?
Yeah, it's been so fantastic, and I am really excited to explore this further. The station that we did partner with this past year was CBC, and so the ones that stand out for me, one, we had an actual exhibition kind of tour given by one of our curators with a host for one of the CBC programs, and describing the artwork that they were seeing and the space in the room, and that was really fascinating to actually just listen to, and the response was great. The other piece that we did, which was really fun, was we did it more kind of like a day in the life of the gallery. And so we had, again, CBC come down, and from the moment that they walked through the front doors, they started recording. And it was just all about the noises, sounds they were hearing in the gallery, the experience of coming up to our admission counter, and then walking through and capturing the responses to the exhibitions that they were seeing. And at the time we had Fashion Fictions, which was a really fun and exciting exhibition with lots of different elements to it that made the segment really interesting. But then there was a sculpture one as well. And so it was interesting to just kind of pick up on the day-to-day sounds that one hears, people coming up and asking questions. So it was a lot of fun. I want to continue to explore it. CBC, we're great partners, and we can maybe expand upon it.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I think also thank you for the ingenuity to try something like that. You're an arts gallery, so that you know, you're predisposed to think visual, and not like a radio. But to tap into these different the auditory component can be so powerful and profound. So for you to leverage that, there's a measure of risk with that, I suppose, but that is paid off. And so really commend you on being able to leverage that technology that's been dying for a long time, and giving it some great life at the gallery. I just want a nod to the folks who are running this. There's somebody who put in a link to a course on SEO essentials. I don't know if that's allowed, but maybe that can be shared more broadly in the chat. So if you are allowed, I would ask that audience member to don't put it in the questions, put it in the chat if you're allowed. So sorry if I'm breaking protocols there for Aubrey and team. We have about 3 minutes left, and I'm going to actually try and land the plane on time here. So I'll try and scan for one more question from the crowd, but I think that this has been really interesting and exciting when I'm thinking about the edutainment the different ways in that you're working as well, Jasmine. And I'm thinking back to the question or the framing of perhaps the non-culture goer category at 19%. When you look at that, what does that tell you, and or how do you react to that? Do you think that we should look at that box as a focus for us in terms of either A, reframing it, or B, putting our attention to it? So if I can start with you, Jasmine, from a non-culture goers, should we be paying more attention to that as an arts community?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, when I look at this category, there's so much opportunity here, opportunity for us to ask questions about what voices are missing, what voices don't necessarily feel comfortable coming into the art gallery, and how can we reach those people and communities and help them feel welcomed. And so that's what I find super interesting, because I want to kind of nerd out on that data. And, I think about that as well from a marketing and media perspective. Where are we not telling our stories? That's just as important as where we are. And building upon that in a thoughtful way. So I think this is rich with data here and opportunity. And I think we should all pay attention and really consider this.
So, Rachael, maybe a similar question, but a slightly nuanced one. It seems to me that Fever plays in the space that's sort of like that intersection between quote unquote traditional like entertainment per se, and then this culture going market. I have personal questions I'd love to discuss with you and anybody who's willing about how we frame and label all of these different folks. But if I may, it seems that you're entertaining both, not entertaining in a pointed perspective, but you're working on both. What is your reflection on that category? How important is it for you? Are you paying attention to it? Are you putting energy towards it?
Absolutely. I think that cross-pollination, and Jasmine put it beautifully about making people feel comfortable and giving them that access and giving them the right messaging is so important. I mentioned earlier the analogy of, I describe Fever as the Netflix of live entertainment. We can learn a lot from Netflix in that ability to cross-pollinate and put emphasis on different categories, right? The F1 Drive to Survive story is so cool to me. Netflix has millions and millions of subscribers like me who maybe signed up to watch rom-coms or to watch Bridgerton or something. That's my area of interest. And then stay on the platform and watch F1 Drive to Survive. And all of a sudden, F1 goes from having 8% female fans to over 40% female fans in the space of 3 years. That is such a cool success story to me. And I think there's so much opportunity for that same cross-promotion or cross-pollination in entertainment and culture. And so absolutely a huge focus for us is using the audience we have from Candlelight Concerts or, whatever other experiences have been really successful, and making sure we promote to them, whatever they might be interested in their market, because when the whole market is successful in reaching audiences, it only, boys, however you pronounce that word,
Yeah.
it only brings everyone up, right? So absolutely, it's a huge focus area for us to make sure we're looking across categories and promoting arts and culture.
Amazing. We started off this with Nik with a great slide that had joy in the center of it. I think when I hear the wonderful work that is being done by Jasmine Bradley and Rachael DiMenna at both of your institutions, and the thank you for coming to this forum and speaking about that work so intelligently and eloquently. I'm thinking of joy for myself as well. Aubrey, over to you.
Thank you so much. That's really well put. Yes, so much joy. A big thank you to panelists Rachael, DiMenna, and Jasmine Bradley for contributing your insightful responses to the research and for answering so many of the questions from our audience. Thank you to Kondwani for your excellent moderating skills today. It was great to have you with us. And thank you, Nik Nanos, always insightful analysis of the data. Regardless of the art form or the size of the organization, I think one of the big takeaways for me is that building that wraparound experience of the programming is really important. Whether you're thinking about the social aspect, the way you're welcoming the audience and thinking about their needs is central to the programming. It really shouldn't be an afterthought, but considered right at the start of that programming ideation. I was also so excited to see so many amazing tips and tricks being exchanged in the chat. So thank you to everybody for participating. Thank you to the National Arts Center and Nanos Research for continuing to partner with us on the Arts Response Tracking Survey. Thank you to David Bennett and Irfan Raji, who are also big supporters. And finally, a big thank you to Power Corporation of Canada, who are the presenting partners of the Business and Arts Speaker Series. If you want to learn more about any of the Business and Arts programs or events, please head to the website businessandarts.org for more information or follow us on social media. So many thanks and have a wonderful rest of your day.